Vietnam, EU to sign free trade agreement this year. M&A's countdown to the next market boom. Hello from Hanoi, and it's great to see you again on another episode of BizLine, brought to you by VTV International. You're with me, Ling Huang. As usual, we start with a review of economic highlights from last week. After 2.5 years and 14 rounds of negotiation, Vietnam and the European Union have reached an agreement in principle on the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. A press conference was held in Hanoi on August 4th to announce this concluding milestone in the negotiation process. At the conference, the two sides announced the commitment in eliminating import duties on more than 99% of tariff lines. The EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement is expected to contribute 7 to 8% of GDP growth for Vietnam. Vietnamese export to the EU is predicted to be up 10% by 2025. The 48th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting kicked off on Tuesday in the Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Phạm Bình Minh led the Vietnamese delegation to the event. A focus of the meetings was the ASEAN Community 2015 and its vision to 2025, of which the ASEAN Economic Community, or AEC, is a key pillar. According to Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak in his opening speech, an increasingly integrated ASEAN is on course to be the world's fourth largest economy by 2050. Further, the AEC could drive annual regional GDP growth of 6 to 8%. The Nikkei Vietnam Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, a composite single-figure indicator of manufacturing performance, posted 52.6 in July, up slightly from 52.2 in June, and signaling a further improvement in business conditions in the manufacturing sector. The index has thus risen for 23 consecutive months, supporting the stronger improvement in business conditions with sharper expansions in output, new orders, and employment. Total new business increased solidly as a result of greater customer demand. The National Brand Council and the Ministry of Industry and Trade held a conference on branding on Tuesday in Hanoi. The participants pointed out the advantages and difficulties in building brands in Vietnam in the context of deeper economic integration. Research has shown that the value of Vietnamese brands in 2014 stood at around $170 billion, up over 30% compared to 2013. Consumer confidence in Vietnamese brands indices have increased sharply in the past 2 years. However, Vietnam is ranked only 6th among ASEAN countries and 15th in Asia. Therefore, the National Brand Council is working to connect all national brands for co-development and improved competitiveness. Export turnover of agricultural and aquatic products reached $17 billion in the first 7 months of this year. The trade surplus was $3.6 billion, a drop of nearly 30% compared to the same period last year. These were some of the figures presented by the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development at a conference on Wednesday. Exports in July saw a 10% slump from June, with coffee experiencing the sharpest decline in terms of both volume and value. Seafood export also dropped 17% year-on-year. Imports of agro-produce and raw materials such as cotton, cashew nuts, and corn have increased. The Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development expects the difficulties to continue for the export sector in the remaining months of this year. The prices of RON92 gasoline and E5 biofuel were both cut by 4 cents per liter on Tuesday, marking the 5th adjustment in fuel prices since the beginning of this year. Prices of RON92 gasoline and E5 biofuel now stand at 88 cents per liter and 86 cents per liter respectively. The reason for this price cut is a sharp fall in the cost of imported petroleum products over the past 15 days, following global oil prices hitting a 6-year low. The Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Industry and Trade have agreed to retain a portion from the Petroleum Price Stabilization Fund. coal production has been suspended in the northern areas of Guangning province since torrential rains and floods hit the province last week. The coal industry has incurred losses of $55 million. The Vietnam National Coal and Mineral Industries Group has thus mobilized all resources to restore normal operations in the mining areas, especially at the Mong Duong coal mine. Mining activities are expected to return to business as usual by the end of this week, except for some badly damaged mines. Hundreds of kilometers of roads used to transport coal are also being repaired. Currently, there are around 30,000 miners out of work. Those are several highlights in the business and economic scene for the past week. Up next, we'll talk about merger and acquisition activities in Vietnam in our crosstalk.
Vietnam has been reportedly engaged in the second wave of M&A, which is expected to take place from 2014 to 2018, with a total volume of $20 billion. With the market set to pick up again after reaching a peak in 2012, senior officials, experts and businesses recently gathered at the Vietnam M&A Forum 2015 in Ho Chi Minh City to examine the ongoing capital flows and M&A trends. Experts at the forum said that with updates in laws and policies, Vietnam's M&A scene is becoming attractive to foreign investors.
Họ có thể là tham gia mua lại cổ phần trực tiếp từ các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam, hoặc là họ có thể mua lại cổ phần từ những quỹ đầu tư, những nhà đầu tư tài chính của nước ngoài để tạo nên những cái thay đổi cục diện cho các công ty. Mình kỳ vọng rằng là những cái hoạt động này nó sẽ tạo ra những doanh nghiệp Việt Nam không chỉ là những doanh nghiệp địa phương như trước đây, mà dần dần sẽ thay đổi để trở thành những cái doanh nghiệp mang tính toàn cầu.
One key point presented at the forum was that many of the recent M&A deals have involved Asian investors.
The interest has increased pretty significantly over the last 5 years. There is a lot of interest from North Asia, so Japan and Korea, where the economies have been slowing, and they have pivoted their investment away from China into Southeast Asia.
But domestic enterprises are also very active in M&A activities.
Ở đây không phải chỉ có các nguồn vốn từ nước ngoài mà cả các nhà đầu tư trong nước cũng rất tích cực tham gia vào thị trường chuyển nhượng, bởi vì họ đã thấy được rằng đây cũng là một cái kênh mà đầu tư rất là hấp dẫn và tiết kiệm được nhiều thời gian so với việc là đầu tư phát triển tự mình.
True to the forum's theme of countdown to the next market boom, more businesses are forming M&A strategies in 2015, after a year starting in the new wave.
In our studio, we have invited Mr. T.H. Ong, Deputy General Director of PwC Vietnam, focusing on M&A, to share his analysis of the trends and impacts of mergers and acquisitions in Vietnam. Thank you very much for joining our show today.
Thanks for having me, Heng.
First of all, what do you think about the overall picture of M&A activities in Vietnam so far this year?
Well, based on publicly available information, the number of M&A announcements for the first 6 months of 2015 has already exceeded the number of announcements for the full 12 months of 2014 as a whole. In addition to that, the FY15 economic growth and inflation rates for Vietnam currently stands at about 6 and 3.3% respectively. With this in mind and the ongoing consolidation and reforms in the banking sector, we do expect the momentum of M&A growth to continue into the next few months as well. That said, whether or not the number of deals that will be closed in 15 and 16 will exceed the peaks that were seen in FY11, 12 and 13 remains to be seen.
In the whole so-called second wave of M&A, which sectors have been the most dynamic in terms of M&A activities according to research?
Well, based on a PwC review of M&A by sectors and trends in the last couple of years, we have always noticed a consistent trend and interest by investors in the consumer and manufacturing sectors. This isn't surprising, given that Vietnam has a population of over 90 million, a significant proportion of the population that's aged below 30 years old, rising urbanization rates, and low wages as compared to the regional ASEAN peers. Bearing in mind these demographics, we do expect continued interest in the consumer and manufacturing space. In some of our analysis, we've also seen, for example, in the first 6 months of 2015, where there has now been renewed interest in the financial services and real estate sectors.
Who have been the participants of M&A deals in Vietnam so far?
Well, traditionally, the targets are almost always local Vietnamese companies because for Vietnam, it's more of an inbound deal coming in rather than external deals. The buyers, in the past, we've always dealt with foreign corporations, foreign private equity firms, but we are now seeing a change in trend whereby there are more Vietnamese conglomerates that are doing deals. And they're not just doing deals in Vietnam, they are also going out of Vietnam to expand their business empire. I think it's most interesting to see these Vietnamese conglomerates because these are the corporations that survived the financial crisis a couple of years ago. They have now got stronger financial position, greater business acumen, and there's also increased professionalism, especially in the management teams. Interestingly enough, we've also seen a lot of ASEAN investors that are starting to make inroads into Vietnam, covering various sectors from agribusiness, retail to the construction sectors. We believe that this may be due to the upcoming AEC that will take place by the end of this year.
Which deals would you say have made great impact on Vietnam's business scene?
Well, personally for me, I don't think there's any particular landmark deal that has left a profound impact on the business environment in Vietnam. What I can say is that all transactions, in some way or another, would have had an impact on the Vietnamese consumer because it increases their awareness in terms of a product, a technical or a service level offering, and I think that's how M&A has always contributed to the economy, especially for Vietnam.
According to the Institute of Mergers, Acquisitions and Alliances, retail has consistently been the top sector for M&As, accounting for 37% in 2014. Earlier this year, Thai retail conglomerate Central Group acquired a 49% stake in the company that owns Nguyen Kim, one of the largest electronics chains in Vietnam. Meanwhile, Japanese supermarket operator Aeon bought in Citymart and Vivimart, two local retailers, and plans to open 200 more stores across the country. As for notable domestic deals, Vietnamese giant Vingroup acquired a 70% stake in Ocean Group's retail chain and renamed it Vinmart.
Đối với các nhà đầu tư thì đấy cũng là một trong những con đường ngắn nhất và hiệu quả nhất nếu như họ biết cách làm và có đủ tiềm lực cũng như là đủ kinh nghiệm để có thể có một vụ mua bán sát nhập làm thu hẹp cái quãng đường, phải nghiên cứu thị trường, phải tìm mặt bằng hay là phải mở các cái cơ sở bán lẻ.
With the implementation of WTO commitments and the coming into effect of the ASEAN Economic Community, retailing in Vietnam is no longer a conditional business sector for foreign investment.
Khi chúng ta mở ra thì đương nhiên là trước đây họ không được vào, thì bây giờ đây là cơ hội để các nhà đầu tư đi vào Việt Nam. Đó là lý do về luật pháp. Nhưng mà cái lý do thứ hai ấy, thì phải nói là các nhà đầu tư nước ngoài đã nhận thấy sự thay đổi khá là cơ bản về văn hóa tiêu dùng của người Việt Nam, và đặc biệt là đây là một cái thị trường mà phải nói là cái tỷ lệ công dân trẻ tỷ lệ rất cao.
Các cái nhà bán lẻ ở nước ngoài vào Việt Nam ấy, họ không chỉ là thâu tóm các siêu thị đâu, họ còn đưa hàng của họ vào. Chủ nước ngoài hiển nhiên là dịch vụ người ta nó sẽ tốt được. Nhưng vấn đề là người ta vào đây người ta có bán lại cái loại mặt hàng cũ hay không, hay người ta đưa cái hàng hóa nào vào. Cho nên tôi không quan tâm nhiều đến chủ siêu thị mà tôi quan tâm đến người ta bán thế nào và người ta bán cái gì.
In general, retail and consumer-related sectors are set to continue attracting M&A interest.
There's a growing middle class in Vietnam who will buy cars, buy apartments, spend more money at restaurants, health clubs, movies. Anything linked to consumer consumption is very interesting, be it brands or consumer services.
Why, in your opinion, has there been such acceleration in M&A deals in Vietnam so far?
Well, Hung, a couple of things that come to my mind straight away, although not of a particular order, is first of all, there's been a greater acceptance and understanding of how M&A works in Vietnam. There's been more attractive economic growth and inflation rates for Vietnam as compared to the remaining ASEAN peers. There's more realistic price valuations in terms of how deals have been carried out in Vietnam. There's ongoing trade liberalization, especially with TPPA coming into effect and the upcoming ASEAN Economic Community, which would take place by the end of December 2015. And lastly, there's been ongoing changes to the legal process and ownership status as well. I believe that a combination of these factors, combined with the demographics that I mentioned previously, would have created a more conducive environment for M&A to happen in Vietnam. At PwC itself, we have actually seen a sharp increase in inquiries from both global and regional private equity firms that are coming to Vietnam, and I believe this bodes well for the local economy here.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would like to focus more particularly on the improved legal environment in Vietnam. In September this year, the foreign ownership cap will be relaxed in Vietnam. How and why will this affect the M&A deals in Vietnam?
Well, as you already pointed out, this change in legal environment relates specifically to Decision 60, which takes effect from 1st September 2015 onwards. Excluding certain sectors which would still remain restricted as per Vietnam's WTO commitment and other legal regulations, Decision 60 will only have an impact on public companies. Specifically, public companies refers to a company that has undertaken a public offering, is listed, or has 100 shareholders with a charter capital of at least 10 billion Vietnam dong. In an M&A environment, not all deals are focused on public companies, as it involves various limited corporations and other types of companies as well. As such, although there are opportunities for existing shareholders to increase their stake in public corporations, we don't necessarily see this as an item that will result in a surge in M&A activities.
Mm-hmm. Regarding the equitization of Vietnamese state-owned enterprises, what do you think about the role of M&A here, and do you think there's room to elevate that role?
Well, definitely so, but I think prior to elevating the role, the government probably needs to get their act together or to be tougher in how they intend to carry out the equitization process. In terms of M&A, obviously, if a foreign investor comes in, there would be changes in the working environment, in the corporate culture, and I think these are things that would enhance how a state-owned enterprise works. Bearing that in mind, a state-owned enterprise in Vietnam is no different from any government-linked companies anywhere else in the world, whereby they're always seen as slow, and the need to improve the processes. So that, to me, is a good thing for Vietnam. I think with a foreign investor coming in as well, hopefully the state-owned enterprises will be more focused on their core business. Because as you may be aware now, a lot of them diverge out of the core business to enter into other sectors that also takes up a lot of capital. So hopefully with foreign M&A taking place and equitization of state-owned enterprises, this is something that would make it work better in the future.
On the sidelines of the recent M&A forum, the Deal Awards 2015 were also announced. Among the honorees was Mondelez Kingdo, the result of Mondelez International's acquisition of an 80% stake in the snacks unit of Vietnam's Kingdo Corporation.
After the M&A, we want to continue the success story of Kingdo, and basically we are very excited, particularly with the big season coming. Mid-Autumn is coming, Lunar New Year is coming. So clearly our growth trajectory will be maintained, and we will bring to Vietnam the best of local and international.
In the banking sector, BIDV's merger with the Mekong Housing Bank, or MHB, was also honored. After the merger, BIDV has increased its total assets to 700 trillion Vietnamese dong, or $32 billion, and now operates over 1,000 branches.
Sau khi chúng tôi sáp nhập thì tất nhiên là cũng có một số những cái vất vả, khó khăn nhất định về coi như là trách nhiệm nghĩa vụ của các bên, cũng như là phải xử lý vấn đề về nhân sự như thế nào cho nó hài hòa. Tuy nhiên về tổng thể thì chúng tôi thấy rằng là cái xu thế nó sẽ tốt lên, đặc biệt liên quan đến khách hàng, liên quan đến mảng lưới, liên quan đến cái gọi là thương hiệu.
For every successful M&A deal, there are many that fail. It's a complex procedure that requires well-thought-out strategies and careful implementation to succeed.
You have spoken about the benefits that M&A deals can bring to Vietnamese companies and Vietnam's business scene as a whole. What about trade-offs?
Well, For Vietnam, M&A has been more an inbound activity rather than outbound. As such, with the inbound, you're getting a lot of transfer of foreign knowledge, foreign brands that are coming into the country. An example that I can share with you that will be a trade-off is a situation whereby, as a child, products that you used to buy and like may not necessarily be something that you would want the same for your children in the future. This is primarily because there are greater options that are now available to you, and with a heightened sense of awareness of what's around you, service offerings, product and technical abilities, you may want something else that's different. The challenge now comes with the local brands. How do they modernize themselves, and how do they accustom what the modern consumer wants so as to remain relevant to the new society? That, I think, is always a challenge, especially for Vietnam, where it's a more consumer-driven society.
PwC Vietnam has assisted many M&A deals in Vietnam from strategy to post-integration. Based on your assessment of M&A activities in Vietnam, what do you think are the weakest links in that whole procedure?
Well, Lin Heng, as you really pointed out, the M&A process starts from a market assessment to a post-deal integration. Now, the M&A roadmap is a long process which can take place over a period of 3 months to a period as long as 3 to 4 years. With each step, we don't necessarily believe that any step is a weak link, but rather each step is a process that needs to be carefully thought through to identify risks and what are the rewards to our clients. At PwC, we always believe that it's important to listen to our clients, to understand where their investment perimeters lie, to understand what affects a go or no-go in their investment process, so that we can address and come up with proper mitigating steps to address this risk. Now, bearing that in mind, a few things that come to my mind straight away are always having the initial discussions with your client to understand what is up for sale, to understand what you want to buy. A second point to think about is, what are the pricing expectations? What will make both parties happy to go ahead with the deal? And lastly, the client needs to understand what they're buying into, what are the key drivers of the business, and where does the business hold in the future for them. These are some of the things that we always talk about with our clients as we have the initial discussions to understand what makes them go.
Thị trường nó đang mở rộng hơn, cái sự cạnh tranh nó sẽ khốc liệt hơn, và các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam càng phải nỗ lực hơn nữa để tạo cái thế mạnh cạnh tranh cho mình. Và như vậy thì cái nhu cầu mà hợp tác với các nhà đầu tư nước ngoài, đặc biệt là các nhà đầu tư chiến lược, nó sẽ tăng lên trong thời gian tới.
Nếu như các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam mà hiểu rõ về các hoạt động M&A, những cái quy định pháp luật của nhà nước cũng như là những cái kinh nghiệm trong các cái vụ mua bán M&A, thì chúng tôi nghĩ rằng là chúng ta hoàn toàn có thể tự tin hay là hoàn toàn có thể sử dụng cái hình thức mua bán sát nhập để tìm con đường phát triển cho doanh nghiệp của mình.
Mới đây thì tôi có tiếp xúc với một số các nhà đầu tư từ Thái Lan cũng như một số các cái doanh nghiệp từ Hàn Quốc và các nước khác, thì họ đánh giá cao cái hiểu biết về thị trường của các cái doanh nghiệp Việt Nam cũng như là sự hợp tác với các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam, chứ không phải là họ đến đây để mà độc chiếm thị trường. Cho nên là nếu như chúng ta thực sự là cái doanh nghiệp hoạt động tốt trong cái thị trường của mình ấy, thì chúng ta có những cái cơ hội tốt để tận dụng những cái kiến thức cũng như là những cái kinh nghiệm của các nhà đầu tư nước ngoài.
So what is your top piece of advice to foreign investors who would want to secure M&A deals in Vietnam in the coming time?
Well, again, a few things that come to my mind is, first of all, they need to understand the requirements of the local market. As most of the deals are inbound into Vietnam, there's a tendency to just bring in foreign technology. But bringing that in isn't always enough. They need to customize the technology in order to cater to the local Vietnamese market. Second point being, respecting local culture. Every country has a different way of doing things, and this is no different for Vietnam. Thirdly, to develop and have a good working relationship with a local business partner. And I think the last and perhaps the most important point is they need to be patient. They need to have a long-term vision on how they would like to build their presence in Vietnam together with their local business partners. I think these are some of the important factors that any foreign investor needs to think about before they come into Vietnam.
With Vietnamese government's determination to restructure the economy and to integrate the economy regionally and globally, do you anticipate better results from M&A deals in Vietnam in the coming time?
Well, with the current economic indicators, with a strong economic growth, with stable inflation rates, with stable foreign exchange rates, we do expect the trend and the momentum of M&A to continue in the future. We do hope for existing investment policies to remain stable, for the government to still remain investor-friendly, so as to set and to ensure a conducive environment for the M&A to thrive.
Well, TH, it's a pleasure to have you with us in our program today.
Thanks, Ling Teng, for having me on.
And that was our talk with Mr. T.H. Ong, Deputy General Director at PwC Vietnam, looking back at a trail of hot M&A deals in 2014 and the first half of 2015. There are signs that the M&A scene in Vietnam will become even busier in the coming time. We hope that this episode of BizLine has brought you some insights that might help you in your investment and business decision. And thank you very much for being with us. Repeats of our show are all online at vtv4.vn or youtube.com/vtv4go. From our team here in Hanoi, until next time.